Hello, everyone. Welcome to Todd Talks. I am joined by James Hake, our lead writer at D&D Beyond, and we're talking about a lot of things today. Starting off, we're going to be talking about, the Dragon Monk. We got a Dragon Monk.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Dragon Monk. I'm very excited for this concept. Yeah, I'm surprised by it a little bit, but of course you want to summon, the spirit of a dragon using your key. I mean, I'm not gonna say no. So
I am very excited for these two new dragon themed subclasses, not just because I'm a big fan of dragons, which I am, but because this is one of our first glimpses, perhaps, at content that will be beyond Tasha's Cauldron of everything. We've seen, we now know, we've seen the table of contents from the IGN report, what is going to be in this book. And these dragon subclasses still need testing, they still need work, and they still need player feedback before they're ready to be published in a D&D book somewhere down the line. So here we have this Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk subclass. And it immediately gives me vibes of the old Dragon Disciple prestige class from 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. Those monks who follow the way of the Ascendant Dragon are basically dragon worshippers in some way. They revere their power, and they can use their key to channel that draconic might to power their combat abilities, to fly, and even to enhance their own allies' power. The first thing we see when we look at the subclass is actually a random table, much like the ones we saw in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, that has a little bit of flavor that inspires your origin. So if you're reading along at home, you can see these D6 tables talking about maybe you honed your abilities by watching dragons and studying them from afar. Maybe you were mentored by a dragon. Maybe you meditated within an ancient dragon's lair, all of that sort of stuff. How did you gain your power? Very cool.
Yeah, I like all of the, like, I really enjoy when they add this origin options, because it does give you like interesting ideas, like this having a dream of a 5-headed dragonborn and you woke up and you had key is very strange and unusual and very fun. And it makes me think of other things, like, I have this main character that is kind of just a loose conglomeration of magical items, but I always wanted, inspiration from that was the old Hobbit cartoon where Smaug breathes flame and all these suits of armor melt. And I always wanted to make a character that was melted armor. So I can kind of imagine this Warforged like suit of armor that is animated and has ki coming from dragons, because it was literally like burnt to a cinder.
Very cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flavor in all of this, and I do enjoy, a monk just maybe even being so close to that energy that's coming off a dragon, being within that, that dragon's realm, and its lair effects that is slowly suffuses that monk, or it's learning from that dragon. There's a lot of reasons for this, and it's a very interesting and exciting story hook that maybe we wouldn't necessarily see unless you were playing a warlock. It doesn't mean that you are playing, you're working for a dragon, but there's interconnectedness there.
I've always said that warlocks and paladins are some of the most story-filled classes in D&D, because they have such a strong hook right from the beginning. And I love tables like this because if you don't have a story in mind already for your character, these tables can create one in a way that maybe the class itself doesn't automatically inspire you to. It does make me think of stories like in Critical Role, where it's clear that the DM and the players have really worked together. They have, they've gotten the opportunity to talk and figure out what their character's role in the world is. And this is the start of that. It's a seed.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is I think this is the most story focused monk we've seen, maybe next to the Astral Monk. But this one is like with an entity potentially, and I really enjoy that. At 3rd level, it's solid. I don't feel overpowered. and maybe I'm wrong, and feel free to tell me in the comments below. But when you are able to, when you damage a target with an unarmed strike at 3rd level, you can change that damage type to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. These are all representative of the dragons in D&D and the damage they do. But this makes you very versatile as a monk. You can really kind of, like, if you're fighting, say, a troll, every time you hit it, you do a little bit of acid damage. You do a little bit of fire damage. This is a nice little flourish that I like, and lets you get over certain immunities here and there.
This is particularly powerful as a way of getting around resistance or immunity to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Now, a monk already gets that at like 6th level, but getting it this early is a pretty nice little boost in power when you're fighting things that have resistances like that. And even if you're fighting something like demons who have a very broad suite of damage resistances, usually it's like fire, cold, lightning, poison, there's always one of them. You get 5 new damage types to play with. There's always some way, if you know your monsters really well, to sneak in that extra damage, which is great from a sort of damage dealing monk perspective. My favorite part of this 3rd level ability, though, is the 3rd bullet point. Let's get the 2nd one real quick. You learn the Draconic language. Great. Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. you should probably know it.
It fits. It fits perfectly. But this 3rd bullet point is very interesting. If you fail a charisma, intimidation, or persuasion check, you can use your reaction to re-roll the check by tapping into the mighty presence of dragons. Once you use this feature, or once this feature turns a failure into a success, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. I think this is a very interesting bit of design that we haven't seen yet in 5th edition, because it's not like you can use this feature a number of times per day equal to your wisdom modifier, which is how we might have seen it in the player's handbook, have been published that way, where you have 3 uses, and whether or not they succeed or fail, use it 3 times and it's gone. But here, you really only have 1 use per se, but it's not spent until it actually does something. And I think this is fascinating because it guarantees that in the long haul, or it almost guarantees that you're never going to waste this ability. You're always going to keep trying until it works.
Yeah, and I love I don't like intimidation as much as I love persuasion. I tend away from deception. I think it's far better to persuade enemies. I think it's funnier than to deceive an NPC. But yeah, this is it's kind of got that stickiness that the Bard College of Eloquence had, right? Where that bardic inspiration doesn't go away until it actually gets used.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that here, and it makes a lot of sense because dragons have that dragon fear. They have that presence about them. When you look at characters in movies that are associated with anything bestial or bigger than life, they have kind of an unworldly charisma to them. And that often is either something very intimidating or something very persuasive.
And it's something you can even see in real life too. There's kind of that allure of being close to power, where even if you distrust someone, just the mere fact that they are powerful can kind of make a person magnetically attracted to it.
It fits nicely into the history of D&D and dragon cults as well, right? Like when you consider some of the past adventures that have existed, dragon cults factor into a lot of things. So if you're a dragon monk and you're associated with, say, Tiamat, this makes a lot of sense. You could be a cult leader and be a monk.
Yeah. I have seen some people talking about whether or not this feature is overpowered, and I don't want to put my hand on the scale too heavily here, because it really is for the player base to decide when they give their feedback for this Unearthed Arcana. But I want to make sure that people truly understand the way this feature works, because it's I think a lot of the claims I've seen are based on a bit of a misunderstanding. This isn't an automatic success feature. This isn't like if you fail, you can keep re-rolling until you succeed, which guarantees success. No, it's you can use a reaction, right? You get one of those per turn to make the check again.
Exactly.
And if you flub it, you've still failed the check. And because this is a social check, a failed check could have big consequences, right? You could permanently lock yourself out of succeeding that check because you've gravely insulted the person or something like that.
Yeah.
So this doesn't seem to me like a way to brute force a social interaction.
No, and what DM will let you? No dungeon master should be.
Right.
It's kind of preposterous in that sense of this isn't a round of combat. You're not like, and yeah, maybe you keep on trying to hit and you keep on missing. But yeah, so it's not. This is not like that at all. Like if you failed your persuasion check, that's kind of it. That's how I'd rule it. They might change the wording of this. But yeah, as a dungeon master, I would never even consider that you would get to make multiple persuasion checks over and over again about the same topic. And if I did have a player that kept on doing that, there would probably be repercussions socially within that game. So
yeah,
I don't feel like that's broken, but you're going to perhaps find a player who wants to break it, and maybe a little bit more wording around that. I don't feel like it's necessary, but maybe a little bit. But this is not a video game.
Right.
So this brings us to, again, at third level, you get Breath of the Dragon. You can channel your ki into destructive waves of energy like the dragons that you emulate. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of those attacks with an exhalation of draconic energy, either in a 20-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 foot wide, your choice. I really appreciate this. This is, some dragons have a line attack, some of them have a cone attack, so I like that they mixed it up there.
Mm-hmm.
The damage type here is either acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. Each creature in that area must make a dexterity saving throw against your ki save DC, taking damage of that chosen type equal to 2 rolls of your martial die on a failure, or half as much on a success. This is not like an explosive amount of energy, but you're getting a lot of people really quick.
Mm-hmm.
At 11th level, that damage for your breath increases to 3 rolls of your martial arts die, which is pretty strong. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. While you have no uses available, you can spend 1 key point to use this feature again. I love it.
I love it. It's strong. It feels strong to me. I haven't run the numbers. I don't know if it breaks the power curve, but this feels strong, and that's important.
And I like it.
I
don't know if it breaks the power curve. At third level, I don't feel like it does. At 11th level, that's a jump in damage. That's certainly a jump. And you should know with all Unearthed Arcana, they tend to send it out into the wild a little overpowered, or sometimes a lot overpowered, and because they know they're going to scale it back. And often it's easier to scale back when something's too powerful than it is to scale up.
That's something I've found whenever I do my design too. If you start by thinking about balance first, you're probably going to make something that's a little bit boring. But if you don't concern yourself with balance at the beginning, then the really interesting and evocative ideas come out, and you can kind of reel them back in a little bit to make them fit.
Yeah, it's if you start with a small concept, it's hard to build off that. You have to go big and then shrink it down to fit. Mm-hmm. It's far easier for me mentally to do the same thing whenever I've done any kind of design. When I'm trying to aim for that sweet spot of it's purely balanced, I inevitably kind of fail in some way. Something's going to be off. That feedback is crucial to UA, and I think this is really cool. Like,
there's a lot to examine here, actually, especially comparing it to the Dragonborn race, who gets a breath attack also. They, in many ways, this is a lot more flexible than the breath attack from a Dragonborn, because not only do you get to choose the shape of it whenever you use it, you get to choose the damage type of it whenever you use it, both things that the Dragonborn is locked into based on their scales.
Right.
It's based off of your key save DC, which is almost certainly going to be better than whatever the
Oh yeah.
Dragonborn's got.
Yeah.
And it deals a not insignificant amount of damage either. I always feel when I use the Dragonborn's breath attack that the damage is a little bit,
Underwhelming.
not worth it, especially for something that takes your full action to use. Here, you get to replace just one of the attacks that you take when you take the attack action. Now, for a monk at the beginning, that is still your whole action. But once you reach 5th level, you get extra attack, then you can use your breath weapon and make another attack afterwards, which is wildly good. To say nothing of the fact that because it's an attack action, you can still use your bonus action to do things like Flurry of Blows, which is dependent upon you making an attack earlier in the turn.
Yeah.
Um,
It is super strong and very evocative. I love being able to describe this combat first off. And at 6th level, we get Wings Unfurled because that's what you want. At 6th level, when you use your Step of the Wind, you can unfurl spectral draconic wings from your back that vanish at the end of your turn. While these wings exist, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. While you have no uses available, you can spend 1 additional key point when you are when you activate your Step of the Wind to use this feature again. Flying monks are scary.
Flying monks are terrifying.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for 1 turn, being able to fly at a speed equal to your walking speed, which, remember, you're a monk, you get more walking speed, is a great way to suddenly close the gap between far distant foes. And you're using Step of the Wind, which lets you dash as a bonus action. So
Yeah.
you can fly farther already. If you wanted to, right at the beginning of your turn, you Step of the Wind. That lets your normal movement be flight. And then you have that dash from Step of the Wind, which lets your dash be flight. It's great. That's, if you're 6th level at this point, that's a potentially like you're flying 90 feet in a single turn and then ending your turn and slamming your breath weapon into another person. It's incredibly long range.
Yeah, extremely long range, very, very, very strong. It reminds me almost of Elder Scrolls Online. If you play a Dragon Knight in that game, you have like this ability where your wings explode out of your back for a second, and you close the distance really, really well and do a little bit of damage.
Yeah,
this is better than that. But again, this is like really super cool and evocative, and it's everything I would want out of a dragon monk. And I think this, it should be said, this, I feel like this makes sense, in the sense that like the fighter has the Rune Knight, right? In Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, it makes sense for the Rune Knight to be a fighter. If you want someone who's kind of like a Dragon Knight, I think Dragon Monk makes way more sense, right? Because like Draconic Sorcerers make sense because you're part of that bloodline. You're suffused with dragon energy. I feel like this is like a strong companion to that concept.
And all of those origins right before all the mechanical bits in this section do a great job of explaining like why a dragon monk in particular. And it's like, oh, well, that's why I've meditated on the secrets of dragons in their own lairs, and I've discovered, I've stolen their power a little bit. There's a bit of...
Oh, go ahead.
I want to talk about the last thing here. While you have no uses available, you can spend an additional key point to use this feature again. That same thing happens in the breath weapon ability earlier. And there's 2 things that jump out of me here. One is that you're keeping track of an awful lot of charges in this class compared to other 5th edition characters. Anyway, you've got your key points to keep track of. You have 2 separate features that sort of tick down based on your proficiency bonus, and then you can even re-up them if you're out of uses by spending more of that limited key. It's good. I really like the way that you can run out of uses but still power it with your key. This is definitely a class, though, that you want to have your pen and paper out for. You want to be keeping track, or even just have like a D6 that you can tilt down like you're playing Magic and tilting down your life total with a spin down die.
That's a good point. Yeah. There is a little bit of bookkeeping with this particular monk. This is when things get real interesting. We've got the aspect of the worm. Can you run us through this?
Yeah, so this is an 11th level feature. The power of your draconic key now radiates from you, protecting your allies from harm and punishing any who raise arms against them. As a bonus action, you can create an aura of draconic power that radiates 30 feet from you for 1 minute. Choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, and for the duration, you gain the following effects. First, you and your allies within your aura gain resistance to the chosen damage type. Second, waves of destructive energy flow out from you and your allies when any of you are attacked. When you or one of your allies in the aura is hit by an attack made by another creature also within the aura, the target that was hit can use their reaction to deal an amount of damage of the chosen type equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die to the attacker. Once you've used that bonus action, you can't use it again until you finish long rest, unless you expend 4 key points to do it again. This is a lot to take in all at once. This is a big dollop of stuff you get. And it's not just that, it's a big dollop of stuff that all your friends get too. You have to be really clear to your allies what exactly they're getting once you've reached 11th level.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you cast Bless and you're like, hey, you've been blessed.
The
okay?
D4, the bless.
When you give out Bardic Inspiration, you're like, please remember that you have it. Or if you're the artificer alchemist, like, I give you a potion. Go on.
A potion, yeah.
Please drink the potion.
I love all that stuff because it really encourages good team play. But as a player, as a dungeon master, as people in a party with you, you have to kind of all be on the same page to be using that teamwork. Otherwise, it's just going to get forgotten a little bit, or it might seem like you're trying to steal the spotlight or whatever.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised it's not called the draconic rebuke, since it's so close to hellish rebuke, and it's interesting too because everyone can use reaction to use that type of energy damage, but they're resistant to it as well. So if you're in a fight with something that is very lightning based or something like that, it's kind of like that is doing lightning damage. It tends to be resistant to the damage it's doing. So yeah, I'm curious how these combats go with certain monsters actually.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I like a monk that can actually like buff the party.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's a little sliver of paladin in this monk, and I think it's very fun.
And again, I think that kind of fits with the whole draconic perspective. And I do, again, it's much like the Path of the Beast. Barbarian that allows you to make everyone else around you kind of feral as well. It does something a little bit in that same line as that Unearthed Arcana, and I believe that is also in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So pretty excited for that. So we got Ascendant. Unless you have anything else to say about this, we got Ascendant. Aspect?
Yeah, I could talk more, but it's mostly just me kind of rambling. So yeah, let's move on to this final capstone feature, the 17th level Ascendant aspect. Your draconic key reaches its peak, and you gain 3 more benefits. Right, this monk gets a lot, doesn't it?
This monk gets a lot.
You gain the following benefits. First, you gain blind sight out to 30 feet, just like a dragon. Perfect. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you're blinded or in darkness. Moreover, you can see an invisible creature within that range unless it successfully hides from you. So all of that stuff in The Hobbit about, right, Smaug being able to see everything within his domain. Yeah, perfectly captures that sort of dragon fiction.
I like that monk who's like stalking around pillars saying, I can hear your air, I can feel your breath.
When you damage a creature with your breath of the dragon, breath weapon, the energy clings to the target. At the start of each of that creature's turns, it takes more damage equal to the type. It takes more damage of the type your breath dealt equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die. And it can repeat the save at the end of each of its turn, ending the effect on a success. So it's like they're burned or there's acid stuck on them or something.
There's very little damage over time, dots. That we call them in MMOs. I feel like someone's been playing some MMOs recently, but this is basically damage over time. And there's not a lot of spells or effects that actually do this because it can be a little fiddly for, to keep track of for the DM or the player to remind you. But boy, do I love it, because if you're like spewing acid, if you're spewing fire, like I like it because you've burned them and the acid is still burning, the fire is still burning, the lightning is still crackling around your enemy. I think the poison is still in your bloodstream. I think I love it. I don't want it to go away.
Yeah, it's still very in the fiction of the story.
Yeah,
but it's interesting you bring up MMOs, because one of the things I was going to ramble on about for that last feature is this feels like it has some of that 4th edition DNA in it. It's very tactical. It's got a lot of stuff to remember. It's very interested in like distances and ranges. And it's got stuff that involves a lot of bookkeeping. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we've got 5 years of 5th edition under our belt, and there are a lot of nice, relatively straightforward classes going on in the Player's Handbook and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and even Tasha's Cauldron. It's interesting to see some classes that ramp up the complexity just a little bit, because it shows a trust that you've learned the game thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I don't feel monks are overly complex. I find that I increasingly don't enjoy playing spellcasters. To shock people, I am finding myself more kind of focused on the melee classes, which I didn't used to really enjoy that much, because of the simplicity of design, to be completely honest, and sometimes it helps me focus on roleplay even a little bit more for my personality type. So the less I can do in terms of casting wish and changing reality, the less things I have to worry about. More magic, more problems.
Speaking of, there's one last feature we should hit before we reach the end of this cool dragon monk, and it's when you activate your aspect of the worm, that big elemental aura, draconic fury explodes from you. You can choose any number of creatures you can see within the aura, and those creatures all take 4d10 acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, your choice. Very cool. It turns your aura from a purely protective zone into also an offensive explosive zone. Very cool.
Yeah. I see you unfurling your wings. You're running up to your friends. You explode with energy. The energy just like hits the front lines of the enemies. The energy then surrounds your friends. They become resistant to that type of energy, and then anyone hits them takes that type of energy as well. I just kind of want to see this animated.
Right, yeah, it's like fantasy superheroes, and once you're at 17th level, right in that tier 4 area, you are fantasy superheroes. That's exactly the kind of game you're playing, and this hits the like aesthetic consideration of it perfectly.
And that's the important thing to remember, and particularly with, because we all do one shots sometimes where we're 20th level, but if you're playing with this character, and often I start at 3rd or 6th, you're growing with this character. Like you're chomping at the bit for a little bit more to do after a couple of games, and you're learning as you go. So I think this is a really a nicely complex monk, but the story is just so purely sound and fun mechanically. I very much love it, much in the way I love the Rune Knight, as there's this built-in story. And we've seen this a lot in Tasha's. All those subclasses tell a very definitive story. I'm very impressed with these two right here. So I gotta say, I wouldn't mind at all playing this type of monk. I'm kind of way of mercy monk from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything right now. But I can definitely see my wife Megan playing this type of monk, as we are all focused on mental health right now. Monks are on our minds.
Right. Yeah, very fun. I don't know how powerful or unpowerful it is, but very fun to play, it looks like.